Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel once again. It's been a little while. The General's Handbook 2025 to 2026 is out, obviously. I've been wanting to make a video talking about it, and I've had a friend or two bugging me to make a video about it, but I wanted to get in at least a few games before I talked about it and get a little sense of how I'm feeling. Get a little experience under my belt, play a few of the battle plans, play a couple of my armies, which I've now done. Took a little while. I was not playing that much for a little bit because I was building a giant Lego T-Rex, which is now behind me in my office, being office decorations. But yeah, I think I've played 6 games now of the new GHB. I think I'm 3-3. That sounds right. I'm liking it so far. I'm definitely not adjusted to it yet. It's definitely a lot of big changes, both in the battle tactics system, obviously, but also just the set of battle plans feel fairly significantly different than the last GHB. So I I think I have not played an army yet where I have really optimized my list for this GHB, and I'm slowly learning what that is going to look like. So I've gotten in, I think I've gotten 3 games in with my OBR, 1 game with Stormcast, and 2 with Slaves. It might be 3 with Slaves and 2 with OBR. But anyway, I've gotten in games with those 3 armies. I'm feeling kind of down on OBR. I haven't loved them, either of the lists that I've tried. It still feels a little bit sparse in terms of what you can afford, so that your list ends up being kind of small compared to what I think you want in this GHB. I tried the new Bone Shaper with like Mortec Guard, and I'm still just like very not impressed with the Mortec Guard. And I played a list without Catacross, with just like multiple Soul Reapers and Mortizon things, with some Arcane stuff, and it still didn't feel amazing. It still didn't feel great. Slaves, I played. So I was in an RTT last Saturday. I ended up leaving before round 3 at 1-on-1. But I had my Slaves to Darkness list with double 10 chosen, with a Karkadrak, a Demon Prince with wings, the Mind Stealer, and a Sorcerer Lord. And I think that's the whole list. So very small, very elite, same, very similar to the OBR. I beat a Skaven list that was very shooty focused, playing somebody who also I don't think has adjusted very much yet to the new GHB. And that was interesting because it was on a battle plan with 4 woods, 4 obscuring. So he was playing, kind of shooty focused list. He had he had a unit of Jezzails, he had a unit of Warpbolt Scourgers. And I did get to kind of hide in the obscuring for a good part of the game. So that was the first game I played where like that really came into play, and really got to take advantage of the obscuring terrain. And that, I think, was a little, I think it was a little bit of a wake-up call for him, and he'll probably be switching up his lists a little bit. It sounded like, because yeah, I mean, the other thing was, so the Mind Stealer is a monster, and the Demon Prince flies, so they couldn't take advantage of the obscuring, and that meant, he got to shoot the Demon Prince off the board before the Demon Prince did anything, essentially. And I managed to keep the Sphinx alive and, zoned enough away from the shooting. But it really made me think. So between that and I should say now, the other list I played was kind of the meta, 80% the meta cities list with 3 cannons, the Pontifex, 2 units of Cavaliers, like all that stuff. So right now, at least based on that experience, it feels like there is still enough shooting in the game that for a list like my Slaves list, the Demon Prince and the Mind Stealer, if everything else is hiding, like they just obviously become the targets and they just get blown up. And at that point, it's kind of like I would almost rather just have other things that can hide in the obscuring for that scenario. So I even talked to a friend. He said this before I did, but I had been thinking the same thing of like maybe actually a trophy rack Demon Prince is the way to go. So he doesn't have fly because the Demon Prince is infantry. So without the wings, he can hide in the obscuring. And like at the price point he's at now, in a vacuum, not thinking about the shooting, the Flying Demon Prince with Khorne and in the subfaction with +2 attacks. My buddy Roger convinced me that was pretty strong. Oh, and with the double fight heroic trait. And I tried it, and it definitely was strong. Like the game against cities, it got into 2 cannons. It miraculously did not die to the cannons turn 1, and it killed 2 cannons turn 1 before it died. So it did a little work. But I don't know if that calculus changes when you lose the amount of mobility that you lose from not taking the wings. So I really don't know yet if I don't know if being able to hide is worth the trade-off of not having 10-inch movement and fly. I should look. I think the Demon Prince is 6 base and goes up to 10. If it's more than 6, maybe it doesn't matter. Oh, it is. Okay. So it is 8-inch move on foot. All right. So actually, maybe Trophy Rack is the way to go on the Demon Prince. Because the Trophy Rack does give you, +1 anti-hero rend. It's not nothing. Goes up to rend 2 against heroes. So that's interesting. All right. I was thinking that it was move 6 without the wings, but it's move 8. And that's suddenly feeling intriguing. But yeah, the double chosen list, getting back to thinking about the list I've played so far and not being adjusted to the new GHB yet, the double chosen list just felt like it couldn't spread out on the map enough, and it wasn't fast enough against the cities list that I think is much more of the style that is strong in this GHB. So like I almost took a slaves list that had 10 knights instead of 10 chosen for one of the units, and had like the mounted lord. It had a couple other differences, but like I don't know if the 10 knights or even like 2x5 knights would be better, because as I'll get into talking about, I think being able to spread out over the maps is very important. So I think higher unit count armies are going to be stronger this GHB. My like initial impression was MSU might be good. Of all the armies I own, the one I haven't played yet, Cruel Boys, I think actually might have a lot of play. Honest Wargamer just came out with a video today as I'm recording this that I haven't watched yet that has stats and things on it, so I'm not quite up to date on the most recent stats that they have out. But yeah, so let's see. I guess I should get into why I think that's the way to go. And my Stormcast list. I played Stormcast once, and I played against Stormcast once against my friend Nick. And they felt pretty good in terms of having some teleports and some mobility to get around the board. And I feel like that's really what I'm looking for this GHB right now in a list. So yeah, so why is that true? First of all, the objectives are just like way more spread out on a lot of the maps than they used to be. So like Grasp of Thorns, for example, is 4 objectives, but they're like rather far apart. They're in, God, what do we call this? Wow, I should just have this on my computer. Hold it up. They're on whatever you want to call these intersections. of the quadrants. They're in the middle of the quadrants. There we go. So, they're 30 inches apart side to side and 22 apart that way. This is kind of what in the last GHB would be a 6 objective map if you had 2 more in the middle. But there's not 2 more there. They're very spread out. And then, even for the 6 objective maps and the 5s, even those are much more spread out than they were in the last GHB. So, like, I'm going to do this horrible thing where I hold it up again. Woo, and hopefully it focuses. So, like, here you go. 6 objective map. This is the most horrible thing to do. In the last GHB, again, like the first ones we just saw, the 4 outside ones in the last GHB would be on the, let's see, in the centers of the quadrants. And now they are shifted out 7.5 more inches. So they're more spread out than they would have been in the last GHB. And that is true, like, for the vast majority of the missions. And you then also get into, like, for cyclic shifts, I think, the underdog can turn off a pair of objectives. So, like, the 2 middle ones are a pair. Those could get turned off by the underdog, and then, you're vastly spread out because you've got, for that one, whoop, we're doing this again. This is just the theme. This is horrible of the day. The ones out in the corners are way out there. There's only a couple maps that are like 3 down the center of the board, right? So, got Paths of the Fae, they're like hugely spread out, even though it's 5. Linked ley lines are pretty close together. I don't know, Surge of Slaughter is kind of medium. But yeah, so from the primary objectives perspective, it really does feel like you need to be able to spread out over the map. And I think that is why, like, the OBR didn't feel super strong, because OBR, at least, my list that I've played, like, kind of want to be bubbled up in the buff bubble from Catacross or whoever. Catacross is the 18-inch bubble for the Relentless Discipline powers. Everybody else is 12. But, even Catacross, in the last GHB, like, an 18-inch bubble felt like you could really sit in the middle of the board, and that was big enough that it was covering everywhere you needed to cover. And now it's like, now that things are more spread out than they were the last GHB, like, that maybe doesn't even feel big enough to really cover, on maps where, like, the objectives are really far out there and things like that. So yeah, that's kind of, yeah. So high mobility stuff and teleports, I think, feel very strong. The Double Chosen also was like a very bubbled up kind of thing, or even if I'm not bubbled up in a clump, it's only 2 units of Chosen that can go off and fight things. So the game I played against Cities, like, that list has multiple teleports. It's got some very fast models. It's got the orders, obviously, to give everything +3 movement. It was very fast. There were a lot of units, and I just could not, like, it felt like I couldn't spread out enough and deal with everything with that Double Chosen list the way I would have needed to. So, like, I killed a couple cannons, I got into the Cavaliers with the Chosen, but there's 60 wounds of Cavaliers on a 3 or 4 up, and then a 5 up ward, because they were constantly getting the 5 up ward. And then if they're in trouble, the Pontifex can just teleport them out of combat back to wherever she is. So yeah, that list just had a lot of tools, both to gum up a small unit count, high unit strength, small unit count army like mine, while having enough other things to run around and get all the objectives. So that felt very, very strong. And then there's also tactics, obviously, that require being out and about on the map and being able to spread out. So, like, scouts, you obviously need to get into enemy territory and, like, back away from enemy units. Master of the Paths? Yeah, so Master of the Paths number 3 is the being near the corners thing, which you need, obviously, right? You need to be able to spread out for. So that's kind of why I'm thinking Cruel Boys, out of the lists I have, might be the way to go. Unless I play, I don't know. It feels like maybe my Stormcast or my Cruel Boys. I could just see it being very strong to have a lot of little like 90, 100 point units in Cruel Boys that can teleport around and just kind of be everywhere, and be hard to chase down. But we'll see. I need to experiment. I have not played the Cruel Boys yet. So yeah, it's just, yeah, I'm still getting used to the new battle plans. I've not played them all yet. I do think I like them. I like the new Place of Power, I think, rather than the casty thing. Just having the different options is nice. The like underdog abilities have felt either non-existent or game-breaking, depending on the battle plan and how the game was going. So cyclic shifts, I was playing OBR versus Gits, and I got ahead early, but then since I was ahead, my opponent, my other friend, other Nick, was, I was kind of set up in the middle of the board, and I controlled the left side of the board, but he just then the whole game turned off the 2 middle objectives, and then like was able to catch up and last turn past me and win like a small win. Because I probably also didn't have good tactics pick that game. Like I kind of got locked out of, that's what it was. I got locked out of finishing. I got locked out of progressing on one of my tactics tracks because I had, oh my god, what is it? I had Restless Energy. So I had completed the first one, but I was locked out of the next 2 because one of the objectives he turned off was in enemy territory, so I could never get it while he was the underdog because he just kept it turned off, and I was just locked out of, parts 2 and 3 of Restless Energy. And I forget what my other one was. I think I had a tune to Garan, because I was like, retreat and charge. That's like the old thing. OBR liked that. OBR likes being in the center of the board. But yeah, that one I was at least never going to get the third one. The way the game state was, like I was never going to get all enemy units that were in my friendly territory because there were 2 units of 6 rock guts that I was just never going to kill. So that seemed very hard. So yeah, in terms of like thinking about tactics, let's think about tactics for a minute. Like I said, I tried Attuned, and I ended up not liking it. It seems, I don't know. I don't think it's awful. I think it's one of the worst ones. It's just very, I think it's a little too conditional and a little too easily blockable. So like the first one is have 2 units in the center of the board that are not in combat. That was very much, obviously that's exactly out of the last GHB. The same tactic was there. But last GHB, if you fail one tactic, like, it's not good, but it's not the end of the world. But if you couldn't get that, you weren't getting locked out of 2 more tactics. So the real issue here is, last GHB, you do that tactic 1 turn, your opponent gets like a cheeky counter charge off or something and is in combat, manages to tag you in combat or whatever, and you don't get it. Sure, fine. You missed one tactic. Now, you try to do that turn 1 or something, and your opponent manages to block it. Then you're stuck in combat, and unless you can clear out of that combat and kill everything in your opponent's army that can tag you in the center, you are never getting your entire page of tactics. So it really depends on you. It really requires you go first, which you are not guaranteed. And then it requires, your opponent to not have some shenanigans they do. And then even if you get past that point, right? Even if you get past getting the center, you got first, you got up to the center. The next one is 2 retreat and then 2 different 1 charged. So again, it's not impossible. It's the same thing as the last GHB. It's just you know, it requires 4 units. So again, thinking about the fact that having a lot of units is probably going to be good in this GHB, you need to have 4 units to do this tactic. And then Purification Rites is the last step, step 3. No enemy units within friendly territory and no enemy units within neutral territory. So it's very much a fighting, killing thing. You've got to keep everyone out of your territory. And again, speaking to mobility being super important, if you're a very mobile army and your opponent has this, if you can have a little shitbag 80-point unit in the back corner, they're either going to have to go run and kill it and chase you down or not get, their last tactic. So all of this, as I'm thinking through it, is still adding up to MSU, mobility, teleports, all being very good right now. Master the Paths, I think I like a little more. But again, this one feels like another one that is not... What do I want to say? I feel like there's a couple that are very focused, and you're kind of hitting the same theme with each of the steps. Whereas, like, Attuned and Master the Paths feel like they're a little scattershot in the theme of what the 3 steps are. So, like, Master the Paths... You first have a killing thing. You've got to kill a hero. Sure, okay. If your opponent's hiding their heroes behind their units, you've got to kill your units first. Or whatever, right? You got to have a way to get to the heroes. And then Seize the Path, step 2. Excuse me. You complete it if there are more friendly units in neutral than enemy units. If there is no neutral, you have to have no enemy units in friendly territory. So again... This is one. Again, you need a lot of, you need a lot of units. High number of smaller units, good for this. This is potentially a killing tactic because if you've killed your enemy units that are in neutral territory, obviously they're not in neutral territory anymore. If they dead, they controlled, as the wise saying goes. And then Envelop and Strangle is step 3. 3 different friendly units, each wholly within 9 of a different corner of the battlefield, and only one of those corners is wholly within friendly territory. Only one of those 3 could have been set up this turn. So again, teleports to get to the back corners, fantastic. Having little shitbag units that can spread out and you're not breaking apart your castle that you are relying on is good. But again, I don't know how, like I was saying, like I feel like that the theme of the first is a little different than the theme of the next 2 for this. I don't know how good an MSU teleporty, I'm thinking Cruel Blaze in my head whenever I'm talking about this. I don't know how good that is going to be at killing, getting the hero so then they can spread out and go do the other 2. I don't know. I don't mind Master of the Paths. I think that's a decent one. Intercept and Recover is just the smooth brain... smashy. There's not much to say about it. If you have a killy list and your focus wants to be killing, this is a nice focused one on killing where you pick 3 units and kill them. It's easy. All 3 are the same thing. You have to kill 3 units to get your 3 tactics. Love it. It's focused. It's all the same. You're not like, Tactic 1, I have to kill a thing in the center. Tactic 2, I have to be in the corners of the board. Like, it's not one of those ridiculous things. So... I think Intercept and Recover is good. Again, countered by Intercept and Recovering, picking 3 little 90-point units that are fast or can teleport, and will just run away to the corners of the board and say, all right, you have a killy army with like some elite killy units. Do you want to send that unit to my back corner of the board to kill my unit of Ether Wings that I picked for this? I guess you do, because you want to get the tactic, but, like, that is not how that, you don't want to send a unit of Chosen to the back of the board, right, to kill 3 Ether Wings. Alright, so that's Intercept. Restless Energy. I like this one, although this is very much a win more. So, yeah. control an objective that was controlled by your opponent at the start of the turn. This is something you are going to be doing every game anyway, so there you go. Well, hopefully, if you have any chance of winning, hopefully you're doing this. Step 2, control every objective within enemy territory. If there are none within enemy territory, control every objective that was controlled by your opponent at the start of the turn. And then Alderoots Entwine and control every objective. So that's obviously just a win more. I control the whole board. I'm racking up the points. Is step 3. This one I found. So between this and the underdog power sometimes being very important, I have found that myself and my opponents are sometimes not taking primary objectives, specifically so that you don't take one that the opponent could easily take back next turn for restless energy, or to try and purposely be the underdog to control whatever the power is, to be able to turn off the objectives next turn and have a bigger swing, that kind of thing. So on the one hand, I like that because it's encouraging some more tactical, strategic, whichever one is appropriate, thinking. On the other hand, it feels kind of weird and bad to be like, I don't actually want to take this primary objective because that's just going to give my opponent a tactic when they take it back from me, or it feels very weird to be wanting to be the underdog even more than one did last season. Like last season, it was often nice to be the underdog early on to get your extra command point and all of that. This season, it's like the incentive is even higher, right? There's all these powers. Some of them are very strong. If you're the underdog, you get the command point, like all this stuff. On top of that, sometimes you don't actually want to take some objectives because then your opponent can take them back for their tactic, all that sort of thing. I wanted to, it's the next one. All right, I did miss it. So Wrathful Cycles. I'm going to talk about these a little bit more in the context of a team tournament soon, because I think that's where it gets really interesting with list building and tactic picking. Wrathful Cycles, I am very undecided on for singles. So this is where I'm going to talk about team tournaments. Defiant Surge, step 1, control more objectives than your opponent. You're probably going to do that soon, early in the game. What am I trying to say? It's likely that you can achieve that early in the game, so that's fine. Sometimes this is... Oh, God. The more I think about this, the more I am liking this GHB, because there's so much interplay between different strategies you can take that I think the meta hopefully will evolve in an interesting fashion. So something I meant to mention previously about in this vein is with the shooting versus flying and monsters versus infantry that can hide from the shooting, that balance I could see shifting back and forth as the meta evolves. So the RTT I went to, that Skaven player kind of came out saying, maybe I don't want all this shooting. Maybe I want to take this shooting out because so many things could hide in the obscuring. Whereas I was saying, maybe I want to drop the Demon Prince to not fly and drop my monster so that everything can hide. But which of us makes that decision first, right? Like, if the Skaven player is taking out the shooting from his list anyway, because so much of my list could hide, then I don't need to take out the monster and the flying thing, right? So I think it'll be very interesting to see, and that cities list is very meta right now. Cities are very, very strong right now, and it has 3 cannons and the ogre guy. It has a lot of shooting. So right now I think we might be we might see the meta go in the direction of we need to hide from shooting early. And then if the shooting drops off, maybe we see monsters and flying things come back again. And then once the flying monsters and things come back again, we see the shooting come back. So I have the feeling over the next year we're going to see some, like, you know, some cycles here. And the same thing, that's what I was trying to get across. That's what I was getting to with Wrathful Cycles with that first tactic. If you control more objectives than your opponent, that is something where like I've had 1 or 2 games where I don't stand on all of my objectives to start the game because I want to be the underdog by 2 points. I'm just like, my opponent can have their more 2 points first turn, and then I'll be down 2, and down 2 is perfectly reasonable to catch up from, and I'll have the underdog. And that felt powerful enough that I want to be down 2 points. If you have Wrathful Cycles, if your opponent has Wrathful Cycles, you don't necessarily want to give them a free tactic turn 1, right? So that changes that calculus of, do I want to purposely be the underdog by, you know, taking 1 less objective than my opponent turn 1 on purpose? If you want to block your opponent from doing that, maybe you take Wrathful Cycles. I think there's a lot of interplay there that's going to be interesting to play out. Like, this feels like a set of rules where the meta is not going to be stagnant, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, it's not going to settle out into, like, everybody has the same tactics, everybody kind of knows the best plan. I think that whatever tactic, you know, whatever ends up being dominant, I think there's things that can pop up then to counter that, and then it'll stay in flux. So to continue thinking about Wrathful Cycles, end of the turn. So this is the one where you have to be the underdog. You had to be the underdog. There's at least 1 friendly unit on the battlefield, and at least half of the friendly units on the battlefield rounding up use a fight ability this turn. So again, you have to be the underdog. And that is something that, if other people are also trying to purposely be the underdog, it gets into this weird place where you're actually fighting to have less points, which is strange. And maybe that's not where we go. But that feels weird. But yeah, it's, you know, on some level, it feels good as a player to get ahead early and stay ahead and really, like, crush your opponent, right? I feel like this is the play fantasy thing is a very much a video game thing. Like, what is the power fantasy of the player? How does the player feel powerful and agentic? Have agency, whatever. You know, what are the things that make a player feel powerful? I don't think tabletop gaming has quite that same consideration or like built into it. But like being sneaky and purposely being the underdog and going down early and then catching up isn't necessarily like my ideal like play in my head, right? And if that is like the optimal way to play, that feels a little weird to me. But anyway, so there are some of these that feel like a win more, like the one where it's just like control every objective on the board. That's a win more. So I'm not saying anything original here, right? Like, maybe you want 1 win more and then 1 catch up 1 in case you do end up going down. So maybe you want Wrathful Cycles and the win more 1. Or maybe you just want to focus on winning more and you're like, I can complete all of these. I think so far I've not had a game where I completed 6 objectives. Or tactics, rather. I think the most I have completed is 5? But maybe just 4. I've definitely not completed 6. I think the only person I've seen complete 6 was the Cities player, Nick Rao. So many Nicks in this episode. 3 Nicks. It's a triple Nick day. So again, yeah, speaking to the Cities being strong, it's the only game I've seen anyone accomplish all 6 of their tactics. A lot of my games have been like 59 to 54 or something, right? Like, close. We're not fully scoring everything. A lot of that is we're learning the missions and the tactics and things and learning how to build our lists. But yeah, and then just to quick mention it, the last thing on Wrathful Cycles, Master of Strategy, different friendly unit wholly within each quarter of the battlefield. You control more than your opponent, and there are no enemy units contesting any objectives you control. So that, again, this is one that feels a little bit discordant, right? It kind of feels like every step of this is at odds with every other step. Step 1 is you have to control more objectives than your opponent. That means you are probably winning. You're probably winning the game if you control more than your opponent, and thus you have locked yourself out of step 2 because you have to be the underdog for step 2. So like something in the game state has to flip between those 2 points to get you from completing tactic 1 to completing tactic 2 on this card. And then, so something has to flip. The thing that's probably flipping for you to go from having more to then being the underdog is probably your shit's getting killed, right? Like you're probably fighting, you're probably losing out on some parts of the map, your shit's getting killed. So like, all right, now we're fighting, I've lost some primaries, like my opponent scored some tactics, I'm losing, great, I can complete step 2. But if you're in that game state, like, are you really set up to complete step 3, which is have 4 units left alive and the ability to spread over the entire board, right? Like, those 2 things just feel at such, I don't know, this whole card feels like it's at such odds with each other in between the 3 steps that it doesn't feel very good. Like, it feels like if you're going to be in a position to get the second one, being the underdog, you might not have been in a position to get the first one. And if you're in the position to get the first, you might not get the second. Same with 2 and 3. So I think I've just convinced myself to never take this card. I came into this video thinking that what I was going to say about this card was that this could be a very interesting, whatever. This could be a good card for a team tournament, for a blocker army, for like a defender army, where you're the list where like your job is to eat a bad matchup and not get blown out of the water. Because in team tournaments, generally like scoring differential matters. I mean, it matters in singles too, but even more than just, you know, singles is win-loss for your first measure of placing. Team tournaments are generally total score for the team up to like a cap. So like point differential matters way more in teams than in singles. And so if you are the, you know, if you're a blocker army, and you, again, I just convinced myself that maybe this isn't the right call. But, you know, if you're thinking, I'm a list that I'm intended to be losing and losing small, maybe you take Wrathful Cycles because you are expecting to be the underdog at some point in the game, every game. And you know that you can get step 2 of that. But again, as I was just saying, you need to initially be winning to get step 1. You need to control more than your opponent at some point. And then at the point where you're losing, have at least, you know, a unit left alive and fighting. Is it left alive? Yeah, so it is left alive at the end of the turn. Anyway, I was just saying, so you can't like fight with your units and have them, whatever. It's end of the turn. I'll wrap this up soon. This is just a lot of rambling about the GHB. I hope it's somewhat interesting. If it is, tell me. If it's not, I don't know. Go do something else and don't comment on my video. I don't need that negativity in my life. Life is too shitty right now as it is. The world is crumbling. Let's just think about Warhammer and be positive. So the last one is Scouting Force. Scouting Force is another one that I think is a good focused card where all of the 3 steps are congruent with each other and work well together. So step 1, 3 or more friendly scout units wholly outside of enemy territory. Great. Step 2, 3 or more objectives or terrain features that you control in any combination are being contested by any friendly scout units. The thing I did not realize until it came up and I read the rule is that a unit, so we all know a unit cannot contest 2 objectives at the same time, even if the unit is very spread out and touching 2 objectives, which is less likely in this GHB because the objectives are all spread out. But a unit can contest a terrain feature and an objective at the same time. So you don't actually need 3 scout units to do this. You need I think you need 2. I don't think a unit can contest multiple terrain features at the same time. So yes, you know, I initially read this as you need 3 scout units in, contesting these. And they have to be in enemy territory. So I was like, you need 3 scout units in enemy territory. That's hard. It's actually just 2, so that's a little easier. And then step 3 is a friendly scout unit that was not set up this turn is contesting a terrain feature that you control. So 2, you don't actually have to control them. You just have to contest them, which makes it easy. You just can run next to things. You don't have to worry about controlling them. Oh no, I'm completely wrong. Ignore that. Nope, you do have to control them. I'm an idiot. I can't read. Sorry, you do have to control. Step 3, anyway. The extra thing in step 3, so it's just contested terrain feature that you control, wholly within enemy territory, and more than 6 inches from friendly territory. So this is like not, I don't know. It's not particularly harder than step 2. It's easier than step 2 because you only need 1 instead of 3. It just has to be slightly further away from your territory, which on half the maps, if you are in enemy territory, you're automatically more than 6 inches from friendly territory. I guess that's not as true. All right, that's not as true for as many maps as I thought. There are only 2 maps where your territories are fully separated by neutral ground. There's a lot actually where they butt up against each other. So that is a bit of a restriction. But still, step 2 is control 3. Step 2 is control. Oh, I dropped a card. All right, so there's 3 that there's neutral territory fully separating you, and that's just kind of an automatic thing that they're 6 apart. But anyway, so this is one where, unlike Wrathful Cycles, step 3 compared to step 2 gets easier in terms of the number of units you necessarily need to complete it. So Wrathful Cycles, step 2, you have to be fighting. Step 3, after all the fighting you did, you need 4 separate units alive, and that's even worse. So the last Wrathful Cycles, you also have to. Yeah, this is just you've just won. You've come back from being the underdog, and you've just completely won the game. Is step 3 of Wrathful, because you need to have a unit wholly within each large quarter of the battlefield, control more objectives than your opponent again, which was step 1 as well. And there's no enemy units contesting any objectives you control. So you just have to be winning super hard after being the underdog. Whereas Scouting Force, step 2, you need to control 2 things. If a couple of your units die, that's fine. You only need to control 1 for step 3. So the natural flow of the game is that you're probably going to be losing units as it goes on, and you're getting into the later turns when you want to do step 3. And Scouting Force is like completely compatible with that, as opposed to Wrathful Cycles is kind of in tension with that. Probably the main difficulty with Scouting Force is the maps where the territories do butt right up against each other, and there's no neutral ground anywhere. It's just wholly your territory or their territory. Because suddenly that means you need half your army across the middle of the board, as opposed to, even something like this, you can just move into the neutral ground over on the edges, which, like, you're not going to the other objective at that point, but it's still totally, it's still doable. Especially if you're mobile and can, like, go to the edges just to get out and then come back to where you need to be in a later turn. So it's really just the 1, 2, 3. So I guess there's 4 of the no neutral territory, and you're halfway up. So like 1/3. I guess 1/3 of the plans does make Scouting Force pretty rough if you don't have high mobility and teleports. Because you can set up that turn. So like Cruel Boys, you could teleport. The other issue is I should mention, again, this is not making fun of anybody. We're all like learning the new GHB. We're like just playing these rules again. The Skaven player I faced last weekend, and if I'd been thinking about this, I absolutely would have told him. He realized, I don't know, whatever. One of us realized it like turn 2 or 3 or something. Raiding party, you have to have scouting units outside your territory, at least 3. Scouting units are at the start of the battle. Every non-hero infantry and non-hero cav wholly within friendly territory becomes a scout unit. So if your units are in reserve, they cannot be scout units. And he only started 2 of his units that met the requirements to be a scout unit on the board at the start of the turn. So he was completely locked out of the tactics card for the whole game. Which I probably should have just been like, whatever, we'll just count it. We'll count all your infantry for this game. Whatever, it doesn't matter. This tournament didn't matter. Like I said, I left turn 3. But that, that speaks to this maybe being worse than I initially thought for something like Stormcast, where you do want a bunch of your units starting in the sky to come down later, because then you're not going to have enough scouting units. You got to have things on the board to be scouting units. I did also try this with one of the OBR games I played. I tried this, and I realized I was not catering my list and my tactics choices to each other, which I think you do have to do. This GHB, I think they're very integrated and intertwined. But it was my first game of the edition, right? I was not doing that, so I had Scouting Force, and I was like, oh shit, I only have 3 units on the board other than heroes that I've got. Right, I had reinforced unit of Archai, I had a reinforced Death Rider unit, and I had the 3 Immortus Guard. I was just like, oh shit, if something happens and my opponent kills the 3 Mortis Guard or something before I get out of my territory, you're locked out of the whole card. So yeah, once again, the theme of my thinking here and why I need to try my Cruel Boys soon is that having a lot of units feels good. Well, I haven't tried it yet, but it feels like it's going to be good and feel good. And teleports, I think, are going to feel good. I still think that subfaction in Cruel Boys where you can teleport to units sounds amazing. If you have a couple little 90-point unreinforced Bolt Boy units, you don't really care about sending 180 points of your army necessarily to the back corners of the enemy's deployment zone, turn 2 or 3, to set up for the corners one later. Is that Wrathful? No, that's corners, not quarters is what I'm thinking of. It's like Master the Paths, right? Only one can have been set up that turn that you do Master the Paths, but you only have 3 tactics to complete over 5 turns. You can teleport things turn 3 to be all right, I'll be set up to turn 5, get this. So yeah, I'm very, very interested to play my Cruel Boys with I don't know. I don't know if I don't know if they can do, can it reliably do steps 1 and 2 of Master the Paths to get to that point is really the issue, right? Is an MSU Cruel Boy army going to keep... Well, never mind. You can outnumber in the neutral territory. You don't necessarily have to kill them. You just got to get the hero for the first thing, which Cruel Boy has mobility and some tricks and things. You can get a hero. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to call this here. This is just... I'm just thinking through my first 6 games. I'm thinking about, what I'm learning so far. I think I'm learning that it might be Cruel Boys time again. I'm also painting Seraphon, but they're probably not going to be ready by the next tournaments I play in. So I'm playing in Summer Slaughter, which I'm excited about, and I'm playing in Nova. I was going to do a painting focus Nova and just do painting classes all weekend, but I got on right when tickets went open the first time. I was on there. I was ready to get all my tickets, and obviously the system went down. There was a whole debacle, and the second time tickets went on sale, I had an alarm set, but I was busy. I had company, and I was just like, oh, I'll do it in a couple hours. Of course, I completely forgot. I went on the next day, and all the painting classes I wanted to do were full. So I got a couple Thursday, but I was like, all right, I'll just play in the tournament. That's fine. That's totally fine. So anyway, moral of the story is I'm painting a Seraphon army. I'm very excited about the painting project, but I think there's no way that's going to be done by Nova. So might be borrowing some monster killer units from Jacob to put a slightly better Cool Ways list together than what I currently own. So we'll see. Yeah, no detailed battle reports this time, but I'll come back soonish with a battle report and some actual like deep dive analysis of that, and some lists and things like that. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this tickled your brain a little bit in lovely ways. Hope you all are keeping well and having fun playing Warhammer. See you soon.